It looks like the ACC could be in big trouble, and one of their top brands, if not the top brand, the Florida State Seminoles, could be looking to get out. Pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and let's talk about it. What is up, college sports fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Couz, and welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. Pull up that chair and let me serve you up another shot of top-shelf college football content. On tap in today's episode, we are talking once again more conference realignment, more conference expansion news, and possibilities out there. Today, we are touching on the ACC and Florida State. Now, this is normally a Big 12-focused channel, but this being conference realignment, it affects every conference. So the Big 12 is still impacted by this news. So if you're a Big 12 fan, hang with me here because this is something that you will probably want to hear about. And I'm sure that, most of you have heard about this news because it's a couple days old now, but I have been out of town and have not been able to report on this yet. But I did find a YouTube video today upon doing some surfing, just some YouTube surfing. I came across a YouTube video that ties right into what I wanted to talk about here. And as part of that, I wanted to share a clip from a recent presentation that Florida State Athletic Director Michael Alford did for the Florida State Board of Regents. He made it known that the current ACC TV deal was not putting Florida State in a position to be competitive on a national level, and that something had to change. He made it very clear something has got to change. Now, this YouTube video that I'm going to show clips from, I'm not going to show the whole video, but I will link to the channel, which is called War Chant TV. It's a channel that covers Florida State. I will link to this video, to the whole video in the description box. But I'm going to show a few clips here, and then I'm going to speak to those clips. Let's go ahead and play this first clip.
So I'll say this just because I wanted to point out that we contribute around 15%. If you take the ACC agreement and you look at what ESPN, what ABC, what all the media outlets measure, we represent 15% of the ACC's media agreement, Florida State. But we only receive 7% of the distribution. Us and Clemson account for 24% of the overall media agreement with the ACC. And if you look at the numbers there, the Big Ten is projected to distribute about $80 million on average to their members, and the SEC about $72 million on average to their members. Right now, when you throw everything in, we receive about $42 million. So that would put us literally $30 million behind our competitors and peers across the country. And that's $30 million every year as these contracts till 2036. And remember, some of them go to market again, so that number is even going to get larger.
So according to Athletic Director Alford, Florida State is the most valuable brand in the ACC and brings in 15% of the overall revenue for the conference. Yet they are only getting 7% of that revenue distributed to them based on the current distribution model of the league, which is an equal distribution model. And that is the model that has been adopted by most leagues around the country. And as we've seen in the past, an unequal distribution model sometimes leads to problems because the other teams in the league are not happy with it, obviously. They feel like they're not getting their fair share. These athletic departments, these athletic directors, these presidents, they all have big egos, and they're also all trying to do what's best for their university, and they don't want to be put in an unfair disadvantage. So look at the Big 12. When the Big 12, when teams started leaving the Big 12, back about 10 or 12 years ago, Texas A&M, Missouri, Nebraska, Colorado, the reason they left, one of the reasons is because of an unequal distribution model that they were not happy with. I don't know exactly what that model looked like, but it's my understanding that there was an unequal distribution model that led to those teams leaving the conference. So a lot of times an unequal distribution model does not bode well for a league. Now, in this next clip, you will hear evidence of Alford talking with the ACC about that unequal revenue distribution model. Let's listen.
So we're working with the conference right now. We're talking to them about how we create a revenue distribution model that takes in factors of who you are, how you produce, how you play, what your brand is, working with other athletic directors on that. I know the president and I sit in some meetings on it. So we're working with the conference. Don't know if we're going to get there. Don't know what the revenue redistribution model will make that up. I know it won't make that up, but what can it make up? So they're working on options, but at the end of the day, for Florida State to compete nationally, something has to change.
So there you have it. Something has to change. Right out of the mouth of Florida State's athletic director, something has to change. Now, he made it clear they want the model to be based on how much value the school is bringing into the conference. And he feels Florida State is the most valuable brand in the league, like I said earlier. Another interesting nugget I picked up in that clip is the fact he said he was working with other athletic directors. Could that mean he's working with Clemson's athletic director, who I'm sure also feels like they're being slighted into this situation because Clemson is arguably the other top, and I don't even know if it's arguable, actually. Clemson is the other top brand in that league. I mean, look at the success they've had on the field. They bring pretty good TV revenue in as themselves. They are also a very valuable brand. So I'm sure Clemson's athletic director is also probably looking at this going, wait a minute. We've been carrying this league for X number of years. It's time we get our fair share. And heck, who knows? Schools like Miami, North Carolina, and others could even be looking at it. It's hard to say. Now, everyone wants to talk about the grant of rights and how ironclad this grant of rights is for the ACC that goes all the way through 2036. That's the length of the grant of rights deal and the current TV deal they have with their rights holders, which is primarily ESPN. I have even said right here on this show, I think this ACC grant of rights is ironclad and no teams are going to be leaving in the near future. Well, we now know what it would cost Florida State to leave the ACC because it was brought up in this meeting, and here it is in this next clip.
Okay.
Michael, is any kind of buyout even feasible?
Of the conference,
Right.
Counselor?
The bylaws have language in there governing exit from the conference and what the cost is of exiting the conference. And it is written in there that it is 3 times the operational budget of the annual operating budget of the ACC, is what the bylaws of the ACC say.
Today, that's about 120 million.
Yeah. Today, if using today's numbers, it'd be roughly 120 million.
Is that up front or over a period of time?
It actually prescribes how it should be paid out, which is withholding of distributions and then due at the exit time. The balance is due is what the bylaws say.
Just hypothetically, if we made another $30 million every year, in 4 years, we'd be breaking even if we had to pay that out then, roughly?
Hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
So there you have it, folks. It would cost Florida State $120 million to leave the ACC today and would take them approximately 4 years to recoup that money if they were in the SEC. If they were to leave the ACC for the SEC, they would make up that $30 million gap. But however, it would take about 4 years before they would get their return on investment, so to speak. $120 million is a lot of money, folks, even for Florida State. And 4 years is a long time to wait for a return on investment in the college football or the college athletics landscape because things move 100 miles an hour. In a normal business, it might not be that long. But when you're looking at college athletics and as fast as things change and the fact that some of these TV deals are only lasting 5, 6, 7 years, 4 years is a long time to wait to get your money back. And the fact that, they rely on that money every single year to fund all their athletic programs and things like of that nature, it's critical. However, after what just happened with Texas and Oklahoma buyout to leave the Big 12, it got me thinking that maybe, just maybe, despite what I've said on my own show, what's came out of my own mouth, maybe it wouldn't be impossible for a team like Florida State to get out of the ACC grant of rights. And why do I say that? Well, here's why. Texas and Oklahoma got out of the Big 12 grant of rights for about $50 million each. $100 million total, $50 million per team, which is about 60% of what they were expected to, which is about 60% of the original number of $84 million that was in the contract or the bylaws. And that 60%, according to reports I've read, is pretty standard in these types of negotiations for early exits to conferences and things like that. Teams almost never pay the full buyout amount. It's usually about 60%. If that's the case, Florida State may be able to get out of the ACC grant of rights for about $72 million, which is 60% of that 120. Now, $72 million, a lot better than $120 million, and that could be made up in just over 2 years, about 2.5 years ballpark. If they could get an increase in donations from boosters or find other ways to bring in more revenue for their athletic department, they might be able to close a $72 million gap in a lot less than 2.5 years. And if Texas and OU can pay $50 million, then maybe $72 million is not out of the question for a school like Florida State. Now, I'm not saying Florida State's pockets are as deep as Texas's, but they might just be as deep as Oklahoma's, maybe deeper. So it's not out of the equation, in my opinion, for Florida State to possibly get out of that grant of rights. I'm not saying it's likely, and I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but I think, knowing what I know now and seeing how the whole thing went down with Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12, I now think the ACC is in jeopardy. And I didn't think that even a few months ago, or heck, even a few weeks ago. I have changed my mind on that. I do think we could see the ACC start losing programs and schools. And I think Florida State could be the first shoe to drop. If Florida State does end up getting out of their grant of rights, it would set off another major tidal wave of realignment. I mean, heck, we still got the Pac-12 stuff going on out there. The Pac-12 still hasn't come to their next TV agreement. There are still rumors floating around that the Big 12 could end up getting some of the Pac-12 teams. But it would set off another tidal wave. You know that Florida State would likely not be the only school to leave. Clemson would likely follow, maybe even North Carolina, maybe Miami, maybe even Virginia, because we've heard rumors that Virginia, North Carolina might be attractive to not only the Big Ten, but even the SEC, because neither of those conferences are in either of those states of North Carolina or Virginia, and they're both pretty strong markets to be in. So what does that mean for West Virginia fans and maybe other Big 12 fans? It could mean that the Big 12 may add teams down the road, could potentially add teams to the conference from the eastern part of the United States. If the ACC starts losing teams and does become more vulnerable, we could start seeing teams like maybe a Virginia Tech, maybe a Louisville, maybe even a Pitt decide that, hey, I'm going to have to go to the Big 12 in order to get a better home. Because remember, the Big 12's TV agreement comes back up to bid in 2031, whereas the ACC's is not coming up for bid again until 2036. So the Big 12 could surpass the ACC in per team payouts. Heck, they might even do it on this one. I don't know what the actual numbers are. I think in all, ACC teams are getting like $42 million. Big 12 teams are up to get about $50 million when you add in college football playoff money and NCAA money. So the Big 12 could already surpass the ACC and could pass them even more come this next round of TV negotiations in 2031 for the Big 12. And the ACC is not going to sit back and let schools like West Virginia, Kansas State, Kansas, Oklahoma State, Houston, Cincinnati. I mean, heck, you could have schools. Look at Florida State, for example. If you're Florida State and you've got UCF, a school who was just a group of 5 school, could potentially start making more money than you, that's not going to sit well with me. I'm sorry. I don't blame Florida State at all for wanting to get out of this agreement they're in. I know they signed that grant of rights agreement. They agreed to the deal, whatever. But, man, nobody saw this coming. Nobody saw these massive changes in TV contracts that are hitting right now in college athletics. And I'm sure Florida State didn't either. So I don't blame them a bit for wanting to do what's best for their school and their university. But it could set off another tidal wave of realignment. And it could, depending on what happens, could turn out to be a good thing for the Big 12 and for my school, the West Virginia Mountaineers. Well, I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section, Couz's Corner family and my bouncers out there. What do you think about this possible collapse of the ACC, or the possibility that Florida State at least could try to get out of the conference and go to either the Big 10 or the SEC? I want to hear your thoughts. Or what do you think about the ACC potentially going to an unequal revenue sharing model, which I also think could lead to teams leaving the league and cause major problems for the ACC? I want to hear your thoughts on those topics. And I mentioned bouncers. That's what you guys are called. I have come up with a name for the loyal followers of Couz's Corner. I call you guys my bouncers because you always have my back. And to celebrate you, I have come up with a brand new merch design. It's my bouncer design. Picture of that is on the screen right now. You can get you one of these shirts or any of my other designs that I have to choose from in my merch store right now by clicking the link at the top of my description box. You can also become a member of Couz's Corner, take advantage of the perks that has to offer, which includes merch discounts if you are a Mountaineer Maniac level member. You can support my channel for free also by liking, by sharing it out with your friends, by dropping that comment, and last but not least, by subscribing to my channel and helping me get to my ultimate goal of 5,000 subscribers. With that being said, I really appreciate you tuning in to this episode, and until the next one, Q Country Roads.
West Virginia, proud to mama, take me